This looks a lot like a tragedy now. Page 63. Thus, earlier organizational book Jehovah's Witnesses' Divine Purpose quoted some very general statements made in the book The Plan of the Ages, published in 1886 about the time of trouble, originally believed to extend from 1874 to 1914, and claimed, although this was still decades before the First World War, it is surprising how accurately the events that finally took place were actually foreseen. And that's not true. That is not the slightest bit true. They did not foresee World War I. They thought Jesus would come in the clouds in 1914. Visibly. Similarly, the Watchtower of August 1st, 1971 made the following pretentious statements on page 468. And this is like, you don't understand this? That it's overzeal that makes them lie like this. So like, what's his name? Randall Walters from Free Minds was talking, he's talking about this really well. In watch the Watchtower comments about Randall Walters and Free Minds, because he was there. It really comes about, like, once you take salesmanship to an extreme, you can get to puffery, and then puffery turns into lies. So if you're absolutely convinced that the organization is just the cat's pajamas, it's the best thing ever, and you get in that mindset of just continuously selling it, sell it, make it sound good, sell it. Puffery can turn into lying. It's like really interesting in like advertising, like making unfounded claims. Like making unfounded scientific claims is actually like illegal. So you can't claim things that are false. You can't claim scientific conclusions without backup, right? But you can use puffery, meaning you can say things like, "This is the best thing ever. This will, this will enhance your life. You'll be happier. You will, yada 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 yada." It can all be a bunch of horseshit as long as it's only puffery. If you're lying, then it's not legal. Then you're then the FCC has regulations that can apply to you. They can't stop you from puffery. So the Watchtower, its lying largely comes from the salesmanship atmosphere just getting way out of control. So they can revise history just out of puffery. They think they're just making the organization sound like a cat's pajamas. But they take it to such an extreme that they're actually lying at certain points. And they take it to such an extreme where it's like anybody who would be a wet blanket is obviously an evil. So like just like pointing out that they're wrong is like counter puffery that they just can't handle. They can't tolerate it. They don't think they're lying. The people that come up with the bullshit don't necessarily. They're just trying to be. They're taking salesmanship to an extreme. They've been indoctrinated on salesmanship. Sell it. Anyways, go watch Randall Walters. Search Randall Walters on Watchtower Comments channel. He described it well. From the Bible chronology, Jehovah's Witnesses, as far back as 1877, pointed to the year 1914 as one of great significance. When we miscalculated it, they already acknowledged they miscalculated it. Momentous year of but now that something happened in 1914, now 1914 is the cat's pajamas. Holy shit, a war started then. We didn't think. Now it's like, look at that! It's fulfillment of our prophecy. They never prophesied that. They never said that that's what was going to happen. They said different things were going to happen, and just that gets lost. But now that a whole world war, like one of the biggest, most important wars in history, starts on a date that we said, even though we miscalculated it, now it's super important. We're selling it. The momentous year of 1914 came, and with World War I, the most widespread upheaval in history up to that time, and oh my god, it matches our date we miscalculated. Isn't that amazing? It brought unprecedented slaughter, famine, pestilence, to overthrow of governments. We said that would happen. But they said all the governments would be overthrown and Christ would return. The world did not expect such a horrible events as took place. Yes, they did. Europe knew that there was going to be a massive war for decades before World War I happened. World War I happened mostly because Europe took it for granted that it was going to happen. Like the whole World War I wasn't started by the Serbian asshole getting assassinated. It was started by all these powers building massive armies in the expectation that they would go to war with each other eventually, and that became an excuse. So they built armies, they made this intertwined mess of alliances, and there were three poles. It basically was taken for granted as inevitable. So the reason why World War I started when it did is because they had an excuse, basically. They had an excuse, so they did. People thought it was cool back then. Like, whatever. The mankind as a whole, we still haven't quite. But like nowadays, modern people, it would be very at post-nuclear age. It's very hard for us to ever imagine it being awesome for like all the major powers in the world to go to war with each other now, because we basically all understand that there's no way that such a war could end with anybody being alive on Earth anymore, right? There was a time when the culture of warfare was fun. It was considered noble. We get a chance to do testosterone-soaked shit, and the expectation that it would be fast and honorable, or gain glory by defeating your enemy, yada yada yada. That comes from societies have to teach, successful societies have to glorify war to make it possible for their civilization to go to war. Because if they don't have that capacity, they won't exist very long. It's just the basic thing. It's like necessary. That's one big reason why the Bible exists, is to make it normal, make warfare normal. Understand this is what we do. Like, if you didn't have stories existing already about people going to war with each other and it being a good thing, be like, in the complete absence of that paradigm, just saying, hey, we're gonna go over there, start smashing their heads in. Sound like a great idea? Nobody would think that's a great idea. So you have to have a culture of noble warfare in your culture to be able to do that, because nobody would think it's a great idea to go because I say so, let's go kill those people. Nobody would think that's a good idea. So to a very large extent, World War I happened because they didn't fully understand the consequences. They didn't fully appreciate that the Napoleonic ideals of the strong leader bringing great success and wealth, gaining wealth through warfare, yada yada yada. World War I is the example that allowed us to finally learn that, that's no longer the case. There will not be another successful, warfare is no longer a very good way to gain territory, power, or money, because it'll be so unbelievably expensive that everybody that did it wish they didn't. It brought unprecedented slaughter, famine, pestilence, and overthrow of governments. The world did not expect such horrible events as took place. Yes, they did. It happened because they did expect it. But Jehovah's Witnesses did expect such things, and others acknowledged that they did. No, they didn't. They didn't say that World War I is going to happen. How could Jehovah's Witnesses have known so far in advance what world leaders themselves did not know? That is not what they said would happen. They knew nothing, and they're claiming they knew something. They don't. It's just puffery. Only by God's Holy Spirit making such prophetic truths known to them. So they're basically saying that we miscalculated a date, and they're just lying here. True, some today claim that those events were not hard to predict, since mankind has long known various troubles. If you look at World War I, happened specifically because all the powers in the area in Europe built themselves into the conditions that triggered World War I. World War I, it was the belief that there was political turmoil. There's the belief that the political disagreements could be settled by warfare. So, that war was just an extension of the politics of the time. They thought they could lube the skids by having a war and taking over. But if those events were not hard to predict, then why were not all of the politicians, religious leaders, economic experts doing so? They're lying here. All of the politicians, religious leaders, and economic experts knew that a war was coming for a very long time. Since the late 1800s. It was very obvious to everybody involved that would happen. That's why they were building their armies for it. Except for France, because France is retarded. Why were they telling the people the opposite? Unfortunately, the Watchtower Society, none of these claims are in accordance with the facts of history. Alright, so there's Raymond Franz telling you, or I'm sorry, Carl Olaf Johnson telling you the same thing I just told you. Nothing they said there is in accordance with the facts of history. It's the exact opposite. The Watchtower didn't predict correctly, and all of the people they claimed didn't know it was coming, knew it was coming, and the very fact that they knew it was coming is pretty much the reason why it happened. So they just turned history upside down there. Anybody who had any, whatever, did any amount of, like, if you went to college and had a history class, the history of Western civilization that included World War I, you would just know that they're completely full of shit there and they're lying to you. Whether deliberate or the result of ignorance, each represents a serious distortion of reality. Like I said, I agree with Randall Walters. It's puffery. Puffery! We're Jehovah's prophets! Anything we can claim that makes the organization sound awesome, we'll claim it. We don't go and check the facts. Nobody checks the facts, so it doesn't fucking matter to them. In their mind, they're just cheerleaders. Yay! Witnesses! Jehovah's Witness is the best thing in the world! Everybody should be a Jehovah's Witness! And then that turns into everybody who's not a Jehovah's Witness is a shithead! And everybody who's not a Jehovah's Witness should be killed! And like Jehu, we need to kill those motherfuckers! It's just like an extension of puffery. They've completely... It's not they're not trying to distort reality. They've completely disregarded any connection to reality at all. Firstly, although there are a number of predictions in the Watchtower publications as to what would take place in 1914, none of them came close to the prediction of the outbreak of a world war in that year. Whereas lots of secular people were predicting that war was inevitable long before it actually happened. So if it didn't happen in 1914, it would have happened sometime soon later after that. And they could not have, and war could not have been avoided by people being, like the intellectual realization that it's a bad idea didn't exist. Evidence on the ground did not exist for anybody to conclude that somebody should change course to avoid the war. That's why it happened. It was basically inevitable. There's lots of really good, search World War I on, I've been watching it a lot. So it's kind of cool this came up. I've been watching a lot of World War I movies on YouTube, so. Secondly, the political and religious leaders, contrary to the statements in the Watchtower quoted above, long before 1914, expected that a great war sooner or later would break out in Europe! There, Carl Olaf Johnson just tells you what I told you. I didn't even know that was coming right now. I'm just, commenting. So me and Carl Olaf Johnson were the same mind here. As early as he's going to go into it now. As early as 1871, Otto von Bismarck, the first Lord High Chancellor of the German Empire, declared that the Great War would come one day. So, the Chancellor, or the, he got 100% before they launched whatever the sweep. They were going to go into France and sweep around and take Paris from the west. World War I started with Germany deciding that they could solve their political differences by conquering France. So they were going to, it's the, whatever it's called. They broke Belgium's neutrality. Their whole idea was to swing around, break Belgium's neutrality, swing around, conquer Paris from the west. France is conquered. France first, then defeat Russia on the east. That was the theory on how they were going to win a two-front war. And they decided that it was like, and basically it was preemptive. This is one of the reasons why it was so controversial in the United States to talk about preemptive war. Is that World War I was a preemptive war. They went to war because everybody in the German government 100% voted. They had 100% support for it. Because it's inevitable, and we'll be fighting a war on two fronts. It's inevitable, and we'll be fighting a war on two fronts. So we must do things that otherwise would be bad to do, such as start a war, break or violate Belgium's neutrality, and launch a preemptive war. There is no reason in particular. The only reason why we are starting the war is to preempt the war that we know we will be fighting soon. That is why World War I started. Germany launched a preemptive war to defeat France because in the war that they knew they'd inevitably be fighting, they knew they'd be fighting on two fronts. They knew that that's their rationale for why it was a good idea to start the war in the first place, preemption. And why they had to fight it fast was to defeat France fast so that they wouldn't be on a two-front war. If Germany successfully defeated France, forgot what that plan's called. If they were successful, then they would have won the war. So the whole concept was, because we know we're going to war, we need to launch a preemptive war. That's how World War I started, basically.